Hey everyone, Susan Black here.
And Pete Black.
And Pete wants to make me make it short tonight because he's in the middle of watching World Series. The Washington's playing New York, right?
No, it's
Houston and...
Houston.
Sorry, Houston and New York?
And the Yankees.
Oh, we got New York Yankees. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just kind of fill you in on some more information. We came to you earlier in the month in October and we told you about that we went to Hudson Alpha here in Huntsville, which is one of the world's largest, actually let me give you the correct name for it, one of the largest genomic centers in the world. And they were screening a movie called The Turning Point, The Quest for a Cure from the organization called Bright Focus. And they were researching Alzheimer's disease. And I gave a couple of statistics, and I'll just kind of review those with you, that 5.5 million people in the United States alone have Alzheimer's disease. And if it continues on this trajectory, there's going to be about 14 million people in 2050. And if you live to age 80, 1 out of every 2 people will be impacted themselves personally with Alzheimer's. They will have it themselves if we don't find a cure. So we were talking about what we were learning about at the movie screening, and what they were focusing on was clinical trials. For those of you who are familiar with clinical trials for any sort of disease process, there's 3 phases. The first phase is a human trial, and basically what it is they just want to see what kind of side effects are going to be caused from this medicine, drug, whatever therapy it is. So it's usually for people who there's no other treatment for them, and so they're willing to go ahead and help others by participating in a clinical trial. And those people are going to be really the guinea pigs to find out what kind of effects these medicines are going to have. Phase 2 drugs will tell you about the effectiveness. So you figured out what type of side effects a drug has, and then now you try to figure out the dosing. What would be the proper dosing if it makes it this far? Of course, if a drug has terrible side effects, you're not going to go on to phase 2. So phase 2, you're going to find out the effectiveness. And phase 3, you'll find out specifically what doses, how often, for its effectiveness. Now, Pete was involved in a clinical trial 2 years ago, he started, and it was a phase 3 trial. So they were trying to figure out which doses of this medication were the most effective. So what they were telling us too in this movie is that it costs $5.6 billion for research for one drug. And the reason why it's for one drug to come to market, and the reason why it's that expensive is so many drugs fail. So the research companies, the pharmaceutical companies have spent millions and millions and billions of dollars on Alzheimer's research because they haven't found a drug yet that is effective. Now, people complain about the price of drugs. Well, basically that's why they're so expensive. It's because of the research process just to find one drug that's effective. Very few drugs get to the phase 3. So they were talking about a specific drug called clonazepam, and it went to phase 3, but it wasn't showing the effectiveness that it really needed. Now, I can say that the drug that Pete was on is now it's in a phase 3. They're in an open label study, which means everybody who is in the study will be getting drug, because most clinical trials are going to have a placebo arm, which means there's going to be some people who won't be getting any drug, but they won't know, their physicians won't know. It's just to see what's truly working versus just a marker of a false drug. So what Pete had to do to participate in his clinical trial, there's pretty thorough screening to be admitted to a trial. And this is one of the reasons why we wanted to be in the trial. Pete wasn't really keen on being in a clinical trial. How did you say you felt about it?
Like a guinea pig.
Like a guinea pig, and you didn't want to be anybody's pincushion because there was IVs each time. and there was blood draws and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I really encouraged Pete to participate in a clinical trial because we could get a PET scan, which is your most likely definitive marker for Alzheimer's, and it would be part of the study. Because we checked into that, and it was about $8,000 out of pocket. Insurance wouldn't pay for it, and with myself being an RN, I needed to know. I needed to know what we were up against. I needed to know what the diagnosis was, because there's other things that kind of mimic an Alzheimer's type diagnosis too, and I didn't want us to miss something that we could easily treat. So I encouraged Pete to participate in the clinical trial. Now, typically, it's about a 3-month screening period to be in a clinical trial, and they'll have you come back and forth to do different tests. They were closing the trial. We had 2 weeks to get 3 months worth of data in, and we are 2 hours away from the research center. So we were back and forth quite frequently. Pete had an MRI, he had neuropsychometric testing, he had lab work, and so each phase they would go through, and if you met the markers, then you would go on to the next phase, because the drug company didn't want to pay for the PET scan either. They didn't want to pay for that if you didn't meet their qualifications. So Pete, unfortunately, met all the qualifications, and so he was cleared to get the PET scan. Now, there's a funny story behind that. Pete was out of town with his brothers on a fishing trip. And the only way we could coordinate this, because we had to get it done in a very narrow time frame, is I even tried to see if Pete could fly into the Birmingham airport, and I could pick him up from the airport and we could go straight to UAB to have it done. The problem is he would have to fly through Atlanta, and anybody who knows anything about the Atlanta airport, and this was late summer, early fall, is there tends to be delays because of the weather. And I couldn't risk that, because with a PET scan, they use a radioactive compound, and it's only stable, I think, for like 13 hours. And they make up this compound with that the day that you're going to have it, and it's transported by vehicle for us, it came from Louisiana. So they had to make sure Pete really wasn't going to be there, because it was very expensive for this radioactive tracer to be mixed up and transported. So Pete did fly in to Huntsville. His plane was on time. That was great. But I had a 2-hour window to get him there. Keep in mind, it takes us 2 hours to get there. That doesn't include traffic. It doesn't include finding a parking spot. It does not include actually walking to the area where they do the PET scans. And UAB is a very large facility, and where we had to park and where we had to go for the PET scan was quite a hike. Well, I hope none of my policeman friends, I don't know if Pat Trussell is going to watch this or not, I made it. I made it with a little bit of time to spare, too. I clocked 100 one point. I know that. We were going pretty fast, but I made us there. We got safely. Pete was able to have the test, and they did give us the results back that his Alzheimer's was, I guess, severe enough to participate in the clinical trial. We actually sat down with the physician at one of the appointments, and we said we want to actually see it. So what did you think when you saw that scan? Do you remember when we saw that in her office?
Yeah, it did not look good.
What about it didn't look good?
Plaques.
Yeah, because the plaques will light up in the areas where the radioactive tracers go to, and it wasn't just one area that was affected in Pete's brain. It was multiple areas. It really was every area, but some were more impacted than others. Now, a PET scan by itself is not a diagnosis. So keep in mind, it was his neuropsychometric testing, it was his mini mental exam, it was blood work, it was MRI, and this all coming together. They could put the diagnosis together about this. So at that point, we were cleared to participate in the study, and we started, I think, like a week later or something like that. And we went every other week for a year and a half, and Pete had to have an IV, and he had EKGs, and he had MRIs. They were looking, the EKGs, they were looking for any cardiac involvement, and Pete did not have any changes with that. The MRIs, they were also looking, there was a potential for stroke. Keep in mind, because it's you're working on a medication that's attacking the plaques, and those are in your brain, and so it could be attacking other things too. So what did you think about the whole process of the clinical trial?
Well, we found out later that there was mistakes made.
Yeah, there were some mistakes made on the institution side.
And I didn't like getting poked almost all the time. I got pretty thin skin, and it's...
He's a very, for those of you in the medical field, he's a very difficult stick, is what we call it. It's hard. He only has one good vein, really, and if you don't get it or you blow that vein, then
for taking blood,
for blood, and of course, and with an IV, you want a good vein as well. So
I've had it out of my hand though. Remember?
Yes, you had to do that a couple of times. Right. So Pete participated, like I said. It was a 2-year study, but we were able to do it in a 1.5 years, keep in mind, because we did a 3-month segment of it in 2 weeks. So we finished the study. We don't know if Pete was on drug or not. We were told that if we did not participate in the next segment of the study, that they would let us know. And I just found out that, no, they're not going to let us know. I don't know when they're going to let us know. We were told we would know, and now they said no, they're not going to release that information to us. So we'll wait. Maybe when this next phase of the study is done. They did ask us if we wanted to participate in the next phase, and initially I was all for it, and I said yes, because the next phase is everybody was guaranteed to be on drug. Most clinical trials, what you do is you come from your study and you roll right into an open label. So you don't have any time that's lost. Well, we're out now about 1.5 years. The drug company didn't get their act together to get the open label done. So we've had a decline. Things have gone down in 1.5 years. So first of all, I don't know how you can get good data, because now you had 1.5 years without any drug. You didn't go straight into the open label where you were going to get the drug. So and Pete and I talked about it. We know that the medication that's currently out is not going to be curative. We're thankful that Pete was able to be a part of the study. We're thankful to be a part of research, and hopefully this will help our children and our grandchildren and people in the future. But for us, we decided that instead of spending our time every 2 weeks in a medical institution, getting IVs and whatnot, and potentially having side effects, we decided we just wanted to spend this time together, traveling, relaxing, doing what we wanted to do. And we're still going to Birmingham, but we're going to Birmingham for different reasons. Our children are there, and of course our granddaughter, Miss Ellie, is there. So that's our reason why we're going to Birmingham. We want our Birmingham trips to be positive, happy trips. We don't want our Birmingham trips to be medically related in any way. So right now, there's not really anything in the pipeline that is showing any sort of curative or preventative effects for Alzheimer's. They still are working on a vaccine. I don't think we'll ever see that in our lifetime, but the scientists are working very hard. And there's probably a whole lot more to this disease than what we're thinking. I'm thinking there's got to be some sort of environmental impact that we've done as humans to really expedite this. Plus, we're living longer, but that doesn't explain why Pete at his young age got a diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's. So that's where the research is right now. We are just going to enjoy our life. We're going to enjoy each and every day, and we're going to take all of you along with us on our journey, because we certainly are going to enjoy our journey. So until we meet again, remember to enjoy your journey.